Hello and welcome to my presentation about philosophical teachings on human nature. I am Mikhail Sergeyev, and in this presentation we are talking about four thinkers: Mencius, St. Augustine, John Locke, and Abdu'l-Baha. This is the second part of the presentation, and for the second part we turn to Western thought, and first to classical Christianity. Here we are going to talk about St. Augustine, or Augustine of Hippo, a Christian thinker, philosopher and theologian of the 4th and the 5th century after Christ. St. Augustine is considered to be one of the greatest Christian thinkers of all times, and he is also the greatest doctor of the early Christian Church. Furthermore, he is recognized as a saint in the Catholic Church. St. Augustine is known for his many contributions to Christian thought, and more particularly for introducing and establishing the doctrines of the original sin, grace, and predestination. We will be discussing the concept of the original sin, and for that we have to come back to the beginning of the Bible, to the first two stories in the Bible, the story of creation and the story of Adam and Eve falling from God's grace in the Garden of Eden. Everyone is familiar with the story, and in the course of their evolution, monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, produced many different interpretations of the story of the Garden of Eden. According to traditional interpretations of Judaism and Islam, it was Adam and Eve who actually were responsible for originating evil, because they were given free will and they succumbed to temptation instead of following the will of God. Christianity, on the other hand, developed a unique interpretation of the story, and it was St. Augustine who formulated this interpretation. According to St. Augustine, the seed of the story is about reward and punishment. When Adam and Eve were placed in the Garden of Eden, they were perfect human beings. Being perfect human being means to have free will. And to have free will means to have the capacity to sin and the capacity not to sin. Now, according to St. Augustine, had Adam and Eve followed the will of God, God would have rewarded them for that behavior, and they would have become like angels. Their reward would be that their capacity to sin would have been removed from them, and they would become like angels, being able only to follow the will of God. However, Adam and Eve decided to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, to succumb to temptation, and as a punishment for that, God had removed from them the capacity not to sin. So as a result, the original human nature was distorted, and since then, Adam and Eve's posterity inherited only one capacity to sin. Humans are naturally inclined toward sinning. That's what St. Augustine calls the original sin. So his thesis is that human nature was originally good, but it was tainted by original sin after Adam and Eve's fall from grace. And therefore, as St. Augustine argues, faith and baptism are needed in order to restore the original goodness of human nature. And without faith in Jesus and baptism into Christianity, humans would not be able to redeem this original sin. Only Jesus Christ would be able to do that. Now let's move on to modern philosophy, and here we will discuss the ideas of John Locke, a 17th century British philosopher who is considered to be the father of modern liberalism. He is one of the first British empiricist philosophers. Unlike rationalists, who argue that rational thought is the most important part of human cognition, empiricists claim that it is in fact sense perception that is more important than human rationality, because we gain our knowledge mainly through sense perception. Now let us remember that John Locke's theory of mind became the origin of modern concepts of identity and the self. So this philosopher is as important for us as ever. In his essay concerning human understanding, John Locke proposed a new and original thesis about human nature. His thesis is that human mind at birth is a blank slate, or tabula rasa in Latin, and it does not possess any innate ideas. So, according to John Locke, knowledge is based solely on experience that is derived from sense perception. Now, this idea became very popular in modern times because it postulated the actual equality of all human beings. We all are at the point zero when we are born, and the differences that we develop are basically due to our nurture instead of our nature. This idea of John Locke that human beings are born as tabula rasa became very popular in the age of democracy. And this concludes the second part of my presentation about philosophical teachings on human nature. I am Mikhail Sergeyev. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.